Mishika and Sri, welcome to BGS.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited. And another platform that also has an acronym that's very similar, BGV. Yeah. So speaking of, I'd love to throw you right under the bus and ask you both to introduce each other.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
You want to go first? You can go first. So Sri over here is an avid reader of memoirs and really all fiction, but loves history to some capacity. She is based in the Bay Area. She went to school at Santa Clara, which is where we met, and she loves to hike. She bakes amazing Christmas cookies, and she just enjoys sitting on the couch, binge watching TV, and talking to friends. Is that it?
Yeah. Okay. This is Mishika. She is the co-founder of Brown Girl Bookshelf. Mishika is based in Manchester now, but has lived in many different places, from Chicago, where she grew up, to New York City, and now most recently in Manchester. She loves memoirs and nonfiction for reading. She is probably reading constantly, and actually every kind of genre imaginable, but those are her favorites. She is challenging herself with reading goals this year, including reading long lists between the Women's Prize for Fiction, which she finished the long list for, and is also now reading for the Booker Prizes. And it's like a marathon of reading. And so she's in it for the long haul. She also really enjoys cooking and spending time with her family, including her sister and her husband, and catching up with all of her friends back home.
It's like you rehearsed that, both of you.
We did not really. We didn't at all.
We've never introduced each other.
We've never, yeah.
I mean, I feel like I left out so many.
I know. Now I'm thinking things too. Yeah. As you were talking, I was like not really paying attention because I was like, what am I going to say about you?
Wow, you had time to think.
Yeah, I had time to think.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
Well, I think you were both incredibly articulate. You've mentioned co-founder of Brown Girl Bookshelf. So should we introduce the business? Would one of you like to, maybe Mishika? Do you want to?
Well, we'll start with the inception story. So Sri and I, we've done long distance as friends for years. We started our friendship in undergrad, and then Sri stayed in the Bay Area and I moved back home to Chicago. And during the pandemic, we would naturally FaceTime a bunch, talk about how things were in each other's lives and what we were reading. And it was around that time that George Floyd was murdered, then Breonna Taylor was murdered, and there were a whole host of events happening in the United States. And we felt like we wanted to engage with more books by writers of color. Our shelves were pretty diverse, but obviously there's always room for improvement. And we felt like we wanted to also document that, because between the two of us, we share our opinions and thoughts and feelings, but we figured there was a way to bring friends and family into the conversation. And we didn't want to just keep this to, Black writers. We felt like we can comment on the books, but we don't identify as Black. And so our understanding of that experience is limited. And as we were doing some research, we realized there wasn't a space for South Asian writers. There wasn't one central location readers could go to learn about South Asian literature. And we wanted to kind of dabble in that space. I don't want to say we wanted to become that space, because our ambitions weren't that big. Like I said, we just wanted to invite friends and family into the conversation. So that's when we started Brown Girl Bookshelf, which was just an Instagram handle at some point. And then over years became a platform. And now it's a community, because the followership has extended to tens of thousands of readers. I think across all of our platforms, there are about 40,000 readers engaging with South Asian writers. And so that is kind of in a nutshell, like how we started. But of course, there's so much more that we do that Sri could probably touch upon.
Yeah. Well, I think just to add color, like for a platform, so we started on Instagram, and then we had people following us there and wanted a way to have longer and deeper conversations where we could also share some of like our own thoughts and things that we were thinking about in the broader landscape of literature. And we initially, if I remember, started putting that on like our Instagram stories, but then of course that would like disappear. But we would want to have these like longer form conversations and share like media articles. So then we moved to starting a newsletter where we could have those just like lengthier thoughts and put our own thoughts in there and have like longer spaces for book reviews as well. So that's kind of how it grew into a more multifaceted platform. And the kind of thing that I like chuckle about now is I remember we had a conversation maybe maybe a year and a half in, as we saw like there are more people following us. It very initially, I think like when we started getting the first like dozen people who we didn't know and our friends and family following us, we were like, this is so crazy that like other strangers, like I was like, Mishika, did you think that like strangers would want to follow us on this? Like that's wild. I think Mishika maybe did know a little bit. I was like very surprised.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, we had this conversation about like, should we be a community or not? And I think that was a word that was at the time, like it was such a buzzword. I think it still kind of is, but was getting tossed around so much. And I remember thinking doing that virtually seems really hard. We were still figuring out what like a post-pandemic world looked like, and it felt like people were exhausted of all of the virtual stuff. And we didn't really conceptualize what in-person kind of community building might look like for this. So I remember saying like, I don't think we want to be a community. Like, I think we should just be a platform. It should kind of be like one directional. And we were lucky, and I feel like lucky that I was naturally proven wrong in that, and that people showed up as a community anyway, and they were like, no, we like this and we want to engage more. And there were in-person spaces that then opened up as the pandemic became more and more in the past or part of our natural life. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I see things evolving for us as well.
And you've come so far. I mean, we were just chatting about it before we sat down, that sometimes it can be quite challenging, running a community and or platform as co-founders. So I'd love to know what that journey's been like for both of you, what your reflections have been around the last 5 years of actually sharing that space with a co-founder. And I'd love to hear from both of you on this, actually.
I'll say like something about the community before I talk about working with Sri.
Sure.
I think when I moved to England, specifically Manchester, my thought was, oh my goodness, like I don't know if I'll have people to engage with on this topic. And I didn't have that sentiment when I moved to New York City, because New York being New York, population being huge and very, very diverse. I just realized like I would find like-minded creators there. And what's been really nice in kind of bringing BGB internationally is seeing that there's readers everywhere.
Yeah.
And there are people willing and able to listen and lean in on the conversation everywhere. And so from going to a very like narrow-minded perception of expansion, we've really just now kind of realized no matter where we are in the world, we will make the most of the opportunity, engage in events, create local events, partner with other brands like yourself to make sure that we're having the right dialogue and looping people in that we feel like share some of the same beliefs, and oftentimes even like people who don't share the same beliefs, because that makes for a more fruitful conversation. But to working with Sri, I honestly think it's been really easy in the sense of we've never been in the same city working on BGB. Like we've always lived apart, even through the inception of BGB. And so we're quite used to allocating for time difference, and we've been with each other through different jobs and life. And so I think we are really patient with each other and know that like, okay, you know what, she's out of pocket right now, or she's put her holiday on my calendar, so I'm going full steam ahead. And so it's just been kind of gradual, whether I've been in New York and you've been in San Francisco, or you're on holiday somewhere else, or I'm here. And so I think it was great starting apart and having that foundation. So now that when we've scaled, we don't have to think about all these things.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll offer, I think, like the parts that I remember us having conversations and like figuring out was not as much with just each other, but actually as well as there was like more responsibility, I think, like almost like a kind of like a civic responsibility that came with having a platform and having like an audience that was like listening to us and like what we should be talking about and like engaging with. So both in terms of like the content that we were putting out there, I think that our conversations have shifted from being initially, I think, was just sort of like any other friends talking about books, like imagine a book club of 2, to then being like, what should we be doing with this platform? And that, I think I have learned a lot from Mishika as well in that conversation, in those kinds of conversations, and the way she sees things and thinks about the world is different than mine in a way that makes it a richer experience of like how to, like, even for example, like how deeply she engages with like authors and publishers and has like a view on like, for example, like I'll give you like a funny anecdote here. Mishika is like in Facebook groups talking about like the Booker Prize long list. I am not tapped into that side of the book community at all. And I would never have known that like that is an audience who like engages in a particular way that like we should try to tap into to reach. And so I think we engage with this hobby in very different ways, like the art of reading in very different ways. I think on my end, like I am like on like things like I follow more like articles. I think initially like I'm like the ones like I'm reading these shorter form pieces. And so thinking about like how do we bring in other kinds of media, because I don't only read books, but I read in like these other platforms. So I really like that we bring those different aspects. Like Mishika is like a reader's reader, like, you know, like goes in deep on those. And I was never that person, and I don't have to be for this to work, but it invites many different kinds of people then to our platform. People who read like a few books a year can still feel included because they don't have to be reading like 17 books and talking about every page of it, but you could be that person and like you could also be part of it. So I really like that.
Yeah. One thing I'll add is Sri and I work full-time jobs, and I think people think we just do BGB full-time, which we do not. And so we consider BGB our night job. And by day, we bring a lot of our strengths in the workplace to BGB. So what I mean by that is Sri is like an operations guru, and I am not that. I'm very type A, but like in terms of expanding how we use certain software, I don't focus on that because my mind is like very much in the creation of content. So Sri is like doing our thing on Notion, making sure everything's organized, like really bringing us to a place where we are working fast and in the most like efficient way possible. And I work in product marketing. And so like that is my area of interest and expertise. And so I'll come to Sri and be like, okay, we need to think about this book as a product. And so if this were a product, how would we market it to this target demographic, right? Just like the language we use is very different too. And so I've learned words from Sri that when I work with counterparts in the office who are very operations focused, like I can drop that in and they'll be like, whoa, how'd you know that? And I'll be like, just my other boss, you know?
That is so clever. And it's really nice that you bounce off of each other rather than kind of being like, actually, this is not working because we're different. It's actually, it works more because you are different. You actually cover more bases. It's such a nice way to think of it. I really liked what you said, Sri, about there's no one type of reader, because I have a lot of reader's guilt often, which is just surrounded by the fact that I just have so many books. And I think I was telling you this when we first spoke. I am someone who heavily acquires books, whether it's from charity shops or, you know, I'm also reading articles, but I think I'm a little bit scatty in my brain about what I read and where I read. And some months I'm very focused on just books, and other months I'm like actually articles or Substack. Substack's my new love at the moment. And I follow both of you now on BGB. So I really like that actually there's no need to feel guilty because there's just no single way of being a reader. Like I don't have to join book clubs, you know, to call myself a reader. And actually I've grown up reading and I have such a love for it, but also life gets in the way. So I guess we can touch on the fact that you mentioned, Mishika, that you both have full-time jobs. You know, Mishika, you got married last year, you've moved continent. Is there consistency in how you run BGB, or have there been months where it's actually been a lot quieter because of just life happening?
I think one thing, like a very tangible system that we recently did, which Mishika had the idea for much sooner than I adopted it, was like to actually divide and conquer certain aspects, like our email inbox versus our Instagram DMs or things like that. And having like structure process around it. I think I was reluctant to it at first because I was like, this should just feel fun and fluid, like a hobby, although I am kind of an operations nerd. But in things like that, it felt like this is maybe too rigid. And I was completely wrong. Like that was the right move because especially this was actually just before I think you moved to Manchester that we started doing that. And I think even that simple system has been a world of difference because we just know like Mishika's handling this, I'm handling this, so we can be on different hours and like have those things covered. And then there's like still a significant chunk of things we collaborate on. But some of our tooling investment, I think early on did really help with that. With like, we tag and leave comments for things or we try not to overcomplicate it. We still just like shoot each other texts about it, but it'll be like, hey, left you a bunch of comments in our Notion, like check it out when you have time. So that way, even if like that week I have a really busy work week and Mishika has a lot of time, she can like play catch up and like front load a lot of her work. And then I can catch up on it later. For like our posts, like I'll do a lot of the review editing and she'll do the photo editing. So like having that kind of distinction of responsibility and then tagging each other in has helped us a lot offline.
Very organized. And I guess that's the only way to do it, right? Is to have it down somewhere because there's two of you and everyone's busy. So yeah. Notion is actually, interestingly, I've tried using Notion and I just find it so overwhelming because there's so many templates you can go down the route of. And it's like, I feel like everyone has to customize Notion to their liking. And I've just not put in that investment of time to do it. But I feel like I'm going to try again because if it's
I can help you.
Yeah. You need a one-on-one.
I would love that.
Yeah, I can walk you through our templates.
So taking a quick step back into, I'm really fascinated by the actual inception still of BGB because obviously there was so much happening during COVID lockdown 2020. It feels like a lifetime ago, yet somehow it doesn't feel like that long ago either. One question that I'm really interested in knowing is, I guess, how did you envision at the time you said it was friends and family only, but what kind of experience did you want to create for them? Like, was it going to be kind of social media posts only? Was it going to be kind of an extended version of the Instagram stories that you used to do? Or was there a kind of longer term aspiration somewhere, maybe Mishika in your mind more, that this is going to become live events, there's going to be collaborations with authors and we're going to do book swaps and all the amazing things that it now has become?
I definitely didn't think about the events, the collaboration, none of that. I was just hoping that we would be like a safe and reliable space that readers would come to if they were interested in reading South Asian authored work. And I actually don't even remember when it got to a point where I was like, oh, we're doing this. You know, like I don't remember what month it was or what number it was or what really like propelled us to be like, this is a thing that's very like ingrained in who we are now. And it's just what we do. But I think for our family and friends, what we wanted to at least showcase was like, we are putting in the time to learn about our heritage. And not just our, I identify as Sikh, and I wanted to interact with more texts that allowed me to learn about my faith. But I also wanted to spend that time investing in learning about the Sri Lankan Civil War or to learn about Bangladeshi history and culture. And sometimes when you think about South Asia, you think about it as like this one big circle, and it's not, right? So it's so diverse. There's so many languages, there's so many values, so many religions. And so I was hoping that, if someone in my life who wasn't a big reader stumbled upon the page, they'd see, oh, you know what? I didn't know like romance really exists in this space. Like I would pick that up, just to show them that there are so many options. Being South Asian is not a monolithic experience. And I think that's what we were hoping to start to showcase. We've been able to do it at a scale now because it's not just us reading. We have a community of guest reviewers. There's over 100 of them that we're able to say, like, if you identify with any of these books, would you be willing to review them for us? And more often than not, they say yes. And then they pick up the book and they give us their perspective and their experience. And that's how we're now able to kind of like add to the canon, and have people who come to our page be like, okay, this is really expansive. This is not just about Sikh culture or like, you know, the Sikh faith. It's not just about Sri's experience or Sri's faith. So, yeah.
Yeah. I guess on the guest reviewer point, I had a lot of questions around that because I find it fascinating that you've been able to expand it to that point where you no longer are like almost micromanaging absolutely everything that comes out of BGB. And I find that so interesting that you've managed to let that go, because as someone who has not managed to let that go yet, 6 years in, I think it's really impressive that you're like, actually, this is an opportunity for other people to also, you know, get involved. Also, I think I read that, you know, you were starting to get a lot of requests of a lot of books coming in almost on a daily/weekly basis. And how do two of you manage that with full-time jobs? So I guess, how do you select your guest reviewers? Did they come to you? Did you put a call out? And it might sound like a slightly strange question, but how do you ensure that kind of the tonality and the voice and all the reviews coming out of BGB that are not from both of you are still aligned with your ethos and values?
Yeah. We initially had a few like people who we knew guest reviewing for us. It really was born out of need because we got a lot of books that we did want to feature, because at that point when we started getting books sent to us, we did want to be a platform for South Asian books, and we had kind of zeroed in on that niche. And then I think I had the most naive approach to all of this because I was like, there's probably like, I don't know, like 100, like in a couple of years we can read all of them, and there's like hundreds every year. And so I was like, you know, there's no way we can manage this. And so we started finding people who initially we just knew like first and second degree connections, essentially, right, who read a lot, and like we would send them the book in exchange for the review. And then once that started working well, we did do an open call to our audience for guest reviewers. And that's when we got hundreds of applications, which again, I don't think we were specifically expecting, such that we hadn't built this process which we now have to monitor for the quality of reviews, and as well as like have a better system for giving someone a book, because by not knowing someone individually, then we didn't know how to match them to that book. And of course, they only have like a synopsis to go off of. So there was like a few challenges that came up with this. Like either we would get people who, you know, maybe didn't have the commitment that was needed to like get the review to us at a certain time period because we hadn't put stipulations around that. And the publisher or author would have sent their book. So of course they're waiting on the review. So we had to do a lot of following up with people. And then we were like, okay, we can't spend that much time doing this. So then we started putting some guardrails around like, please commit to this if you can return the review by this particular time frame. That was kind of like the first stage. Then from like a quality perspective, we started getting variations of like the types of photos that people took, or the length of the reviews, or like the quality. I think a lot of times people can default to like plot summaries, which isn't a bad thing, but it's like we wanted their opinion of the book. So now we have a guest review guide that we send to anyone who is accepted into our guest review program that has just a lengthier description of like what we're looking for in the reviews stylistically and lengthwise, stylistically for photos. And then we also do have the last kind of layer of editing before anything goes out. So from like a QA perspective, we still like sign off on every word that's published on BGB. The nice part now is after doing that for a few years, we have a sense of the people who frequently review for us. And so we don't have to do nearly as much.
You just trust them.
And they also can see like, oh, like, you know, we can't fit the length on Instagram. So they'll give us like a more appropriate length that I'm not cutting down like tons and tons of words into like an Instagram length like book. And so, yeah, that part has been really nice where we have like actually built an organic dynamic with people. The last thing I'll say is from like a genre perspective. So we have an application and we evolved that application too. We initially just had like sign up here if you're interested. Now we try to collect information about like their their own background to the extent that they want to share how they identify, as well as like what they're interested in reading. Because our goal is also, we will only publish reviews of books that we recommend, because we don't also want to be a place where we're just putting out like, if the reader didn't like the book at all, we don't want to like give bad press to that book necessarily. And so what we try to like do to get the book in the hand of the reader who would be most likely to have an appreciation for it. So if you really like romance, like we'll try to give people those books, because then you're likely to like that kind of book. But if you're not like a philosophical, historical fiction person, we're not going to give you that book for you to then not enjoy it. So
it sounds like it's a process that's sort of evolved and become clearer for you both, as well as you've started onboarding more people. I guess a bit of a rogue one for me is, what would it take a book to receive a 5-star review from BGB?
Gosh, we don't give our books star rating. So we do have a presence on Goodreads, and I think more recently we had to start doing that so our reviews were more visible to audiences, because when you don't give a star rating, it gets buried in the archives. So we don't normally do that. But I honestly feel like some of the most like creative books get our attention. And what I mean by creative is they break the mold of identity-based books and topics. So yes, they do acknowledge that there are South Asian characters, or maybe, the author is South Asian, but it extends so much more than that. Like, I'm not sure. I think like I was really thinking about Mayuk Sen as I was talking about that. So Mayuk wrote a book called Love Queenie, and it's about Merle Oberon, who in 1936 was nominated. She got an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress and Best Leading Actress. And what I really appreciated about the book was, yes, it's about a woman who is South Asian, but is white passing in a very white industry during the Golden Age. But the book isn't just about her South Asian heritage or the masking of that, right? It's about the industry. It talks about her actual roots, but also just kind of the trauma induced by concealing those roots. It just extends so far beyond. And I feel like there was no cliche, and it was so well researched, so well thought out. Really gave like acknowledgement to someone who is forgotten by history. I mean, I didn't know who Merle Oberon was until I started reading the book. And I feel like for me, that was 5 stars, because it just did something so unique with someone so unique.
And it didn't sort of fall into those, like you said, the stereotypes of, what even is being South Asian. That is not a monolith, like you said. So I think we spoke about this when we first chatted, which was my views around, I guess, some of the books I've read, particularly fiction, particularly in the romance genre, which I know you both don't read. But we chatted about how sometimes those stereotypes are so stark when you're reading those books, and, it'll be like, I don't know, talking about mangoes, and then just like, I think like, I love a mango, right? But maybe I fall into the stereotype. But then it's like when you read a series of books that you're just like, but I don't know if if the character has been developed enough for me, or if, there's been enough digging into that person. And it feels like, oh, let me just, it's easier to just throw in a few stereotypes. And I have read a few books like that, and it put me off a little bit for a while. So I'd love to know your thoughts, maybe not necessarily in the genre that I was mentioning, but generally in the books you've read. Are you now coming across more and more thoughtfully written books that actually don't fall into those stereotypes? Or do you still stumble upon those and you're like, oh no, it's happened again?
I will say, I think more and more we see a movement towards more thoughtfully curated books, and especially and happily ones that get a lot of attention. Like, I think when we started this, it was like the New York Times bestsellers and like the ones that were winning prizes might be like nuanced in some ways and like not so much in other ways. And now I think we see many that are very nuanced and very, don't try to like take a reductive take on South Asian, like concepts. I've spoken with people who are not South Asian who we do come across some books that are like that. I really was like happy to hear people who are not South Asian identify like that was kind of weird, wasn't it? Like in that book. And I was like, yeah, I'm so glad that you see that too. Because like, I'm like, oh no, like not this again. And like it happily, like those don't get like some of those books, I think those readers who don't only gravitate towards South Asian books, they did find it because there is some platforms out there are still maybe like sharing that work. And that's how they came across it. But then they have more like, wait, that was kind of weird. Like I read it maybe because it was on like this famous person's book club or whatever. And I thought it was going to be really good. But I think that's like, I don't think that this like culture is just this. Like I'm sure there are, and those tend to be the ones that are kind of like exacerbate the hardship. I think the ones you're talking about are like maybe like really funny, trite, like rom-com types of cliches. But I think the other direction is when it's like only focuses on the poverty and the like harm against women and like really serious existing issues, but like over indexes on that in a way that actually takes away the importance, I think, of those conversations because you're making it a reductive conversation. And then you just feel like defensive. Like, no, like all of India isn't like that. Like not everything about this country is like reduced to the worst things that have happened in it. And I think that's a disservice because then you're not having those hard conversations because you feel defensive. So I'm glad to see that non-South Asian readers have told us that. And we've heard that before. So I think that's a movement in the positive direction.
Absolutely, definitely. And like that whole kind of steering away from consistent trauma porn, which is something we generally just see anyway on the internet and also often in literature when it talks about our history, which I think is also obviously there's so much truth to the experiences as well, right? When we're talking about partition and things like that. But actually, yes, interestingly, for me as a reader, I would like to read more things that are joyful and, you know, not just about partition, actually. I would like to learn about a culture or a community that's so small that I would have never heard of it before, but kind of it exists as well within the South Asian realm. So I guess, how do you pick what you want to review on BGB? You must get so many requests. Do you say yes to all of them? Do you have to unfortunately turn some down or park some? And how does that kind of look on a regular basis for you both?
Yes, we get a lot of requests. And so Sri and I are constantly monitoring our inbox and our DMs to make sure those don't slip through the cracks. We had to make a very conscious decision at the beginning that we would not review self-published books. And I think the reason we had to hold true to that statement was the list would never stop. There was no way for us to kind of like regulate or get through the list. Then I don't think there are enough reviewers for us to take self-published books under the fold. So we've done separate engagements to try and really present self-published books to our audience to say like, we're not reviewing this, but here's a list or here are some resources. So I'd say that's kind of like the one rule that we have. Are there really any others that I'm missing?
Like young adult and children's books are ones that we don't review, but we similarly have like we'll share what they are, but like we are not, I don't really know how I would offer like a thoughtful critique necessarily on like a children's book, but that's actually one of our most popular requests. So we still want to like meet that. But I think it would be challenging to have a review match the standard of our reviews of other adult work.
Yeah. We do roundups every now and then. So like roundup version 10 of, children and young adult books. But yeah, we won't write like paragraphs on paragraphs of our perspective, but we do what we think we can within those confines to at least uplift those authors and again, be that central source that people can come to learn more about South Asian authors.
Because as you were saying that, it really hit home for me how, prone you could be to burning out from, doing all of this work and how important it is to set those boundaries very clearly. Have either of you burnt out whilst running this?
Yes, many times.
Yes.
Tell me more. I'd be surprised if you said no, actually.
Yeah.
You can go first.
Tell you more. Like I said, because we work full-time jobs, it's a little hard to do it all. I will say Sri is so much better about boundaries than I am. I'm very much like the yes woman of the two of us. I'm like, yeah, I can stay up till 3. That's not an issue.
I'll review 50 books in a month.
Yeah, and Sri's like, go to bed. But yeah, I think having both of us in this together is really nice in the sense of like when I feel like I'm burning out, Sri will pick up on that and be like, all right, you just focus on that. I'm going to take all of these other initiatives forward and vice versa. So I never feel like we need to take a pause on BGB. I think one like pretty important call out is we've never done that. We've never both just like packed up our bags and been like, put up a story that says like, we are on holiday or like, we will not be responsive. I think the one time that may have kind of happened was on the day of my wedding when somebody sent us a bit of a snarky message. And you told me at my reception that.
Did I? Why did I do that at your reception?
It's fine. You were just like, look at this funny thing. And I think you just did it to calm me down, like the nerves.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. And then you put up a story being like, if we're not responding to you, it's because we're doing this. And then this being,
yes, I did put that story up. Yeah.
So this being is like one of us is getting married. And it was like 24 hours, right? Of like us being a little bit unresponsive.
Yeah. Mishika needs to hold me back sometimes. The people where I'm like, we don't owe you. So I'm a little bit spicier than I probably come off online because Mishika can like hold me back a little bit. But I'm like, yes, we owe you some degree of like, we take this seriously. Like we want to be there, but this is ultimately still our platform that like, if you want certain things, like we welcome you to like do that yourself as well, but we can't give up everything to make this happen or just it won't happen at all. So I think like I try to do that. I do think of this. I think what really holds me, I'm not always good at setting boundaries like that, but what always like kept me oriented, although this now interestingly may be shifting, oriented towards this was like, I was like, we're just doing this for fun. Like if this stops being like, it's not that it has to be fun every second. I think I did have to learn that too. Where I'm like, yeah, maybe like going through our email inbox is not always fun, or like adding hyperlinks on all of our newsletters in a way that's formatted well, which I always mess up, and Mishika is like always fixing it. Not fun, but like those are minor things. If this becomes more stress inducing than fun, I think that's where we've like gone past the point that we should be with this. And that's been my philosophy. And I try to like come back to that benchmark for myself. And I try to like, I think tell Mishika, like, I don't think this is like something, this is like enjoyable. Like we can say no, you can say no to this. And just because I'm saying no doesn't mean you have to say yes. We can actually just like both say no. And I think you have done that much more recently. Like we recently turned away from an opportunity that I think we were both really excited about, but was going to require a lot of travel, a lot of money investment, taking time off work, would maybe compromise our own like personal vacations we wanted to take. And I'm really glad that like Mishika was like, I was thinking about it. Like, I just don't know. Like, it's a really cool opportunity, but I don't think it's the time for us. And when she said it, I was like, you're so right. Like, I was not going to go on a trip I wanted to go on because of this one. And it's like that, I think trade-off doesn't always have to be the case. So.
Yeah. We feel like a sense of deep obligation, even though we say we don't. And it's like not on our shoulders, but like we do feel deeply responsible. Like if we've upset somebody, we take it to heart. If someone has said something rude to us, we take it to heart, right? We are doing this for fun, but the internet doesn't know Mishika and Sri.
Yeah.
They don't know our intentions. And so I will say, like, we've given a nod to our guest reviewers and we always give a nod to our community, but like massive nod to our parents, our siblings, our sisters, and my husband, because they are so incredibly supportive of us, but are there to be like, take a break, walk away. It's okay. Like, we'll run things by them too. We'll be like, someone said this. And like, do you think that that is true? Do you think we should pivot our approach so we are more, I don't know, XYZ? And they'll be like, let me think about that. And they'll go back and they'll give us the notes. Our friends will give us the notes. And it's really refreshing to surround yourself with people who buy into your mission, but are also there to care about you, not just what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. I do think like I have bounced a lot of thoughts and feelings off of friends and family in a way that like allows me to think about and to come back to that reorientation of like why we're doing this. And also like it has actually helped me as well see the bigger vision, because sometimes it's like I think like maybe we're the only ones thinking about this because like we have been locked in to like people who care about brown readers online. And so it's really validating and then encouraging to like pull yourself out of this burnout when you hear from people like this thing is really cool, or like we really liked this, and those encouragement. It's not just because the compliments are of course like nice in one sense, but I think that actually really does like replenish my cup when I start feeling burnout, because it's like, wow, you recognize this thing. And now I think back and I had friends who were champions of the work before I could see it being really big and impactful, and being like, no, this is a cool thing. Like not everybody could do this. And I'm like, really? Like we just kind of happened upon it. And they're like, no, you didn't. You did a lot to get here. And like, you should remember that and like keep going with that. So that part has been really cool.
Yeah. I think it's such a testament to just everyone anytime who supports their friend or family's venture without really having any benefit in it for themselves other than just seeing you like thrive, because actually that probably explains why you've sustained this community for this many years without ever saying you're going to take a break or like step away. I also feel very privileged to have a lot of people like that in my life who like are literally like holding me up, like when I'm, you know, basically crumbling, or I'm just like, oh no, is this even worth it? Oh my God, is everyone like just either not even like finding it ridiculous, but actually, is it just even relevant? Like what I'm doing, is it even useful? Why am I putting in all this effort? And then those are the people that then remind you, you know, this is why you started, and you know, this is what I see it, like how I see it growing, and you'd be doing yourself and people a disservice. So this is something that I've started picking up as well, is like, actually, if I don't keep going, I'm doing myself and the community a disservice, and also the people that believe in me, right? Because they really want to see you win. Yeah. And how lucky to have that, because I don't know if everybody has that. Yeah. I hope they would, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So how lovely. So that's burnout discussed. But what I'd love to know is, do you ever bicker as co-founders, or disagree and then get a bit spicy, like you said, with each other?
We don't bicker. No. That's just not like our style. We disagree. Yeah. And like, I think then like but we're both like, I think we like being friends first, I think like came with a very high and natural level of like mutual respect, where we will both always hear each other out. Mm-hmm. And we also like, I would say like we have, as a unit, I think we have like opinions, like shared opinions on how things should go. But like when we have individual opinions, they're a little bit of like strong opinions loosely held between each other. Because if you have a strong opinion, I could like very much be swayed that way, because it comes with the degree of like, oh, I trust that's coming from somewhere like smart and thought out and reasonable. And so I don't feel this like, I've never felt in a way that I at least personally know in other spaces, I might be like, I gotta hold fast to my opinion for the principle of it. I never feel that here, because I know that like your opinion is principled too. And so then it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense too. Like we should just run with that. And oftentimes it's like, I don't know what's gonna work. I think that's where we disagree. We're like, do you think we do this or that? And then we're like, we just try it and see, I think, actually.
Yeah, and then the data speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
The evidence.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, that was great.
A very mature response.
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to admit if you bickered.
She's not even being like politically correct here. I think that's genuinely all true.
Yeah.
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 We've never gotten into a fight where we've been like, we need space, don't talk to me, whatever. Like none of that ever.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that Sri actually said, I think on like day 2 of like, we had the handle name. We like said Brown Girl Bookshelf. And then we had a serious conversation on day 2. And you said, if there's any point when we're running this where we realize like this is getting in the way of our friendship, we should stop. And like, I think that...
Did I say that?
You did say that.
I know, you looked like so unsure.
Do you not believe it anymore?
I remember Mishika like coming up with Brown Girl Bookshelf like in a snap. And I was like, damn. And then I knew, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here.
You are.
But I was like, and like since then, like Mishika's creative ideas will like, it'll pop out of her like just, like it'll be like quiet, and suddenly she'll be like, Sri, I had this, and it's like the most amazing idea. So that's what I remember from those early days as a side note. But
we really love each other, so we always hype each other. That's pretty much it.
I can see that, and I really love that for both of you and for all of us, because we just get a fantastic community because we have two amazing co-founders. So are you the kind of go-to community for South Asian authors?
We hope we are.
Yeah.
I think more and more now, like we both got to interview Karen Desai this year, and we were both so excited and pleasantly surprised that we were asked to do that. And I think we have, certainly from like getting books, I think we do get and hear about most. Sometimes we'll also reach out. And so it's not always inbound. I think these days it's more inbound than outbound. But for the most part, there are sometimes we'll see books on in bookstores or like on social media that we hadn't heard about. And but typically now, I think if we reach out, even if they haven't heard of us, they will like look at our stuff and be like, yeah, we're interested. Like we can send you a copy of the book to review or something like that. So I'd like to think our content kind of speaks for itself, even if they don't actually know our names.
Yeah. There's no like air of arrogance in this process. So if you don't think about us when the book is coming out and you stumble across us like a year later, 2 years later, I mean, we've had authors reach out to us being like, my book was published a decade ago. And we're like, great, thanks for finding us now. Like, we'd love to read your work. And so no matter when you find us in your writing journey, like we're happy to consider each book and find a way at least to, if not take it on upon ourselves, like find a guest reviewer who's willing and able to at the time.
And do those reviews typically go on Goodreads, or do they go on your own kind of Substack newsletters, or where can they be seen usually?
Yeah, so we used to post really long Instagram captions. It was like the full review on Instagram. And a few people in our lives gave us the feedback that like shorter might be better. And then of course, Instagram changes its algorithm all the time. So we did eventually realize shorter is better with this circuit of the algorithm. And so shorter versions are on our Instagram. Longer versions are on our Substack, which is like our baby, our pride and joy, because we get to just talk about anything and everything on our Substack. And then we will post to Goodreads too. But we're always looking for other avenues to get the word out. So
we recently posted a review or shared a review of The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Karen Desai on scroll.in, which is a independent journalism site based in India. And they have like a book section. So they invited us to freelance reviews for them. And so that was our first one published there.
Oh, that's very cool. And I think it's great that you're sort of expanding across platforms and not just relying on one, because something that I struggle with is I find Instagram is probably the main place. Even like, obviously we don't do book reviews, but like to post clips or anything, like any events we're doing, we usually go to Instagram first. But actually I am very, very conscious that I don't want to be relying on that only for the coming years. And also B, what if, that's like putting all your eggs in one basket. So, and we've also recently launched a newsletter, and I find managing a newsletter on top of like social media content, it's a lot of work. Yeah. I wonder why I didn't think that when I was before I'd launched. But how do you kind of distribute the work between both of you? Because a newsletter is actually quite a lot of content to be writing, and I'm absolutely sure you're not just kind of typing a prompt into ChatGPT. So how do you balance that out?
Well, I mean, our newsletter is, I think, the thing we both work on. Like, there's never an edition of the newsletter that has gone out without both of us reading it through and through. Or even like if Shri's really passionate about something and wants to start like the editor's section, like our note, she'll run with it, but we'll always kind of like noodle on like the contents of it. So we'll be like, did you think about including this? Or how about we position this? Or, we feel really passionate about that audience too, because it's a very intimate audience.
But a big one.
I'd say intimate in relation to maybe our Instagram, which is more like publicly available and,
And fast, I think, is the other one versus like the slow. Sorry, not to interrupt you.
No. Yeah, that's so true. And so like we really just admire that group that constantly opens the newsletter and comments on the newsletter and has feedback on the newsletter. I mean, we really do like love being super present, both of us, for them. I had a moment yesterday. I was telling Sri I say we, but like you're not with me all the time. I forget that. I was at an event. I was moderating for Karen Desai yesterday in Manchester, and a young girl came up to me and said, like, I have been following you guys since 2020, sorry. And I was one of the initial like 1,000 followers on BGB, and I've never missed a Substack.
Wow.
And that's like music to our ears because, like I said, it's a smaller audience than our Instagram, but like people are actively willing to read long form, which is quite rare these days, where people want short, really snappy, really easily digestible material. So to say like I spent a good 10-15 minutes on your newsletter is just like the highest praise for us and like the highest acknowledgement.
Yeah, that's so true. It's just the most intimate way to connect with your readers and your community, right? And actually, I sometimes when I send out a newsletter and I look at the stats and like people have started opening it straight away, I'm like, wow, like what I'm noticing is people are looking for that kind of reading material a lot more now because everyone's so exhausted from, you know, the rapidness of like all the other places we usually get our information, like reels on Instagram or TikToks. So I am finding actually, even in circles with my close friends, we're talking about reading more. We're talking about articles and Substack. And it's so new, like, I think for me, because I would say like up until very recently, most of us would talk about what we were seeing either on TV or on social media. So it's really nice that people are now like, oh yeah, I'm subscribed to this, or very cool. But one other topic that does come up a lot, actually, which I'd love both of your thoughts on, is getting back into reading after a hiatus, because that is also something that's coming up for quite a few people that I know in my life. As I mentioned, I'm quite sporadic. I read some months and then other months I'm like stuck on one book. But if you've been someone who's kind of fallen out of love with reading and maybe you grew up reading a lot, or, you know, your typical like Enid Blytons, Roald Dahls, Harry Potters, or Tolkien, I would love to know what you would recommend for someone who wants to get back into reading, and also for someone who, you know, might be interested in actually reading something by a South Asian author as well, but doesn't know where to start and is kind of scared of falling into that trap of, you know, the stereotypes. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think I have a few different thoughts on that. I think one thing that talking about the newsletter that I really like about it is that oftentimes the inspiration for our editor's note will come from conversations that we're just having anyway, and then we'll like keep talking about it enough that it'll spin up into like a good newsletter topic, or it will be inspired by some book that we're currently reading and like our own experience with reading that. And for me personally, that has often also been like finding my way back to, oh, I really love reading this genre, or I've missed kind of like a book that has sent me down. I love historical fiction, for example, and it'll take me a long time because I'll read like every Wikipedia hole of what happens in that context, because I'm just like, I didn't even know about this whole thing. Like, this is not a South Asian book, but I recently read Pachinko after, and I was like,
it's on my shelf.
How did I not know about Japanese colonization of Korea? This is a huge part of history I have just been ignorant to. And so I had to go read everything about it. Yeah. And I love that feeling because it like interested me back in that. And I think you don't need to pick up like a 500-page book in order to do that, and to have that like spark. Now what I feel like doing when I read an article or I read something, and hopefully our newsletter is that space too, where it's like if you just read our short editor's note and something in that sparks something for you of being like, that's kind of interesting or cool, or I didn't think about that. Maybe then you're inclined to pick up slightly longer form about that topic, and then you can like work your way to a book. I think that's like one approach. The other is, I think like there's no shame in picking up a book that's like very popular, or like someone who you already know, so that you have like more of a, like, you don't have to be reading like the most literary critiqued, book out there. Like we were talking, like memoirs are a great one of that. Like if you follow someone, and there's tons of South Asian memoirs. Like if you, we here a couple years ago read Indra Nui's memoir. And like if you are into business and you're into those kinds of books anyway, like that's a great access point to South Asian authored book. That is again a book that is not just at all really focused on her South Asian heritage. But of course there's like parts of that because she grew up in Madras and she writes about her childhood. So it's a cool access point. And then if you find like that was really nice and interesting, we have found that now we're like, when we don't read South Asian work, we're like, oh, where was the culture? And so then we like gravitate back to it, but it wasn't always that way. So I think like a way to start is by picking up a book that like feels accessible in whatever way that is to you. There shouldn't be really shame. If it's a romance that has a lot of like cliche things, but you enjoy it because it's like a light read, sure, like that's good for you, which is why we have reviewers who still like pick up those books for us. Yeah. And then I think like go from there. I do like, it's good to like break out of your comfort zone, if you really want to expand those interests. But if you're just kind of like, I want to have accomplished reading a couple of books this year, there's no shame in just like finding ones that you feel like you're going to like no matter what.
Yeah. Memoirs always feel to me like meeting a new friend. Like you are not like having a coffee with a friend. You're like wining and dining them for a very long time because you're spending a lot of time with their book. Yeah. But it's just like such a great way to develop empathy and understanding. Some people like celebrity memoirs, some people do not. So it's just like any shape or form is like a great way of just like sitting down on your couch and getting to know someone else without having to really leave. One other thing that I'd add to Sri's list is graphic memoirs. I think we kind of slept on graphic memoirs for a while. It wasn't like a top of mind for us. And then we slowly started to get into it. And I think it's, if you're looking for like I wouldn't say digestible because graphic memoirs can be really heavy too. But if you're looking for something that is easier access just from like a readability perspective, that's a great way to go. One of the first graphic memoirs I read for BGB was Feelings by Manjeet Thap. It's about seasonal depression.
Okay. I love Manjeet Thap.
She's great.
Yeah.
So
art is just beautiful.
Yeah. So I'd say like what a great way to appreciate art and like both, art as like physical form, but then also just the language that she's using. So I think, short stories, graphic memoirs, really great places to start before you maybe dive into bigger books. And if you're feeling brave, like I think it's great when people pick up those really chunky reads, like 500 plus pages, because it shows you, they're not trying to just like get through a list.
Yeah.
They're really spending time, and there's a lot of intentionality with that 500 page plus chunky monkey.
And go on.
Oh, I was gonna say I'll like confess myself on here a little. There was one year Mishika and I do like a roundup of our favorite books of the year, and like she's always been, and the whole time we've done this, very consistent at reading a lot. And there was one year where I think I only read like 6 books, and it was like top 5, and I was like, well, I only read like 6 books, and then I was like, oh my god, this is like, am I a fraud? Like I run this page but I don't read that much, and then I had to tell people that, and I was like, I really had like a crisis about it to myself. And then I started like from this is where I think I'm in a little operation brain. I was like, I'm just gonna like habit stack this. Like I'm gonna say like I'm gonna read 10 pages or 15 pages, and like I'm just gonna only set that as a goal for myself. And then it feels way more digestible than like I have to get through this whole book, or I have to set like a number of books reading goal for the year, because like how was I going to go from 5 books to like 35 books in 1 year's time felt really daunting. But like telling myself like read 10 pages before you go to bed every day felt like very doable.
Yeah.
So I think that's another way to like, if you're really trying to build a reading habit, and that really worked. Like I was just telling Mishika on the walk over here, like, aren't you proud of me? I read so many more books than I have in the past. She's like, you really have. And like always talking. And I think that I did that over the last 2 years, and now I like try to read. And I read more than 10 because you're interested in the book and you like, get the habit built.
Yeah. And also you just get sort of more motivated as you start kind of doing that 10 pages a day thing, because I I will also confess that I'm someone who will pick up a book and then I'll sort of like keep checking how many pages I have left to finish the book because I get such a kick out of finishing it. And then I remember actually very similar to Pachinko, I read Homegoing like a few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago. Love Homegoing. It was such a wonderful book, but very similar to Pachinko. There's just so many characters and so many timelines and things you have to keep up with that I also found myself Wikipediaing like details and also like actually just trying to remember who the characters were. And I remember after I finished that book, I was like, actually, it took me like a year to finish that book. And I had no regrets. I was like, okay, like that was actually an experience. Like I'm not getting a kick out of, oh, how many pages I have left. I actually liked the experience of reading that. And I'm having the same with my current read. Speaking of, what are you both currently reading?
What are you currently reading? I'm curious.
I'm reading 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak.
Oh,
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I just finished one the other day. I read Malala Yousafzai's new memoir.
Okay.
So we got an advance copy of that. And now I'm preparing for my next interview. So it's going to be with Ashani Lewis. She is publishing a book next year called Suckerfish. Don't ask me what it's about because I haven't started yet.
Okay.
But yeah, there will definitely be a review for that at some point. But we're going to be in conversation next week. So yeah, just getting prepared. I think, unfortunately, I was telling Sri, a lot of my books this year are assigned. So like there are 2 long lists that I've been trying to get through and already
self-assigned.
Self-assigned. Yeah, self-assigned. That's right. Yes. So I'm almost done with the Booker Prize long list for this year. And then just honestly, everything else is related to interviews that we're doing. So just trying to make sure we fully read with the author's book and engage with it before we go into an interview with them.
Yeah.
I am reading Indian Country by Shobha Rao. Which is, I'm only about like actually 40% according to my handle through. But it's a book set in a small town in Montana. And it looks at both the Indian American diaspora following 2 immigrants and also the Native American Indian population there. It's kind of like an interesting murder mystery. And I'm reading that with a group of girlfriends in San Francisco that we like meet to discuss. And then my next, I started a couple of pages of, and I got to see her speak live. Arundhati Roy's new memoir, Mother Mary Comes to Me, is like technically started read, but I have not.
I'm waiting to buddy read that with my mom.
Oh,
yeah, we're going to
that's
do
nice.
it together. When I left my copy of Malala's memoir with her. Oh. And I said, when you're done with this, we're going to start.
Wow, I took my mom to that show. We should get our moms to
oh my God.
Mom book club with
us. Yes, we should interview them for BGV, though. I think
you really should.
They would run away. They would run away.
Yeah. My mom would not know.
I've been asked that as well about my parents. Like, can't imagine interviewing them, but really cute that you share reads and you discuss them with your mums. I wish we could talk for longer, ladies. I feel like this has just been so lovely hearing about the ins and outs of running such an amazing community, and you've both done such an amazing job of being consistent with it and like adding so much value into everyone's lives. So I hope more people through this conversation find out about your work, because I'm not sure how many people in our community or in the UK. I'm sure you have a community everywhere around the world, but yeah, wherever I think there are gaps, I'm sure like people would love to find out more about what you do. I love the camaraderie that you both have between each other. You can really tell that you really like each other and you're actually friends, which is super lovely. And I can see why you have such a loyal community of people who are engaged with what you do. It's just such a testament to what you put out. So congratulations on all of that. And thank you for the work that you do. And the last question that I leave all of my guests with, which I would love for you both to answer for each other, is what do you have strong game in?
First off, thank you for all the thoughtful questions and just even having us on the podcast. You're very great at what you do and really great at fostering a safe space for people to share. So congratulations on everything you've accomplished with BGS. Sri over here is an exceptional storyteller. She will take the most mundane experience, interaction, and then like create an entire Broadway musical for her audience of friends so that it feels like this long, drawn out, creative production. So I think in another life, she was either writing musicals or writing short films because they're just so well told.
Thank you. That's so nice. And I second everything that Mishika just said. Thank you so much for having us and also how you create this space for us to have these conversations and asking like such a good mix of questions as well. And my answer for Mishika is I think she is very considerate, more so than most people are in how she responds, especially when it's not always an easy conversation to have. She always like chooses a exceptionally considerate route where it almost like shines a light on me, and I hope others to like think about how to do that as well.
Oh, I love that. Thank you both so much for coming on BGS. It's been such an honor to have you both, and welcome Sri to London.
Thanks.
Honestly, congrats on all your achievements. And I look forward to actually reading your newsletter now as a new subscriber. Hope to keep reading your reviews and learning more about exciting authors writing really great books.
Thank you.
Thank you.